We came this close to having the Packers play the Lions in the NFC Championship game. For the Bears to join that crew, and I know you're not a draft expert and you haven't studied Caleb Williams, but for the Bears to get into that conversation and to have the Bears in this playoffs next year, is the best way to go to keep Justin and trade the pick and to get a haul, or to draft a Caleb Williams and then go from there?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting position for Poles and Eberflus and the whole front office, because you back up a second, right? When they made that trade last year with Carolina, I don't think anybody from either side anticipated Carolina winning 2 games and having the number 1 overall pick. So I don't even think it was in the realm of possibilities that they ever imagined they'd be number 1 again after trading out of the 1 last year, right? So if Carolina wins, 3-4 more games and they're picking 7th or 8th, there is no conversation, right? Justin Fields is the quarterback because, unless you take the guy at 1 or 2, you're probably not going to pick one at 7 in this year's draft that you're going to say, okay, he automatically becomes our franchise guy. It seems like it's going to be top heavy. And then, the next crop of guys you'll take at the end of the first round, beginning of the second, and those guys, if you strike on, great. But you're not setting your hopes up, okay, if I take Drake May, if I take Caleb Williams, they're my guy in day 1. So now here they are sitting in this situation saying, okay, are we able to pass up? And I don't think this is a reflection on Justin at all. I've really enjoyed watching him. I think he's gotten a lot better. Obviously, he's a heck of an athlete and dynamic. The question becomes, are you willing and able to pass on a number 1 overall pick, presumably a quarterback, 2 years in a row? And really what it comes down to is, if you just assume that Caleb Williams or Drake May, whoever it is not an upgrade over what you have now in Justin, let's just say they're even. The tie goes to starting the quarterback's clock over. And I think there's a big difference between that and just completely disrespecting Justin and saying, okay, he's not the quarterback. If they were picking 8th overall, this conversation wouldn't exist. This is a very unique situation just because of how bad Carolina was, that opened up a possibility and a pathway that I don't think anybody could have ever predicted. And when you can start a quarterback's clock over and you can now sign him to a 4-year deal for, I don't know what it is now, $25 million total or $30 million total, whatever the number is before you get to the 5th-year option, it's just very hard to pass on that number, because you can spread a quarterback, a second-tier quarterback's going to make $35, $40 million. You can spend a lot. You can get your roster a lot better in a lot of other ways with that money. I think that's the dilemma they're facing. I don't necessarily think they view one of these guys as this unbelievable upgrade over Justin. I think simply it comes down to, we're a year away from having to pay Justin, and if he plays really well, we know the number that comes with it. And if he doesn't play well next year, we're back to square one.
Is it a time? I understand what you're saying about the clock, and I'm a big fan of that. But if it is even, isn't another tiebreaker trading down and improving your roster by getting, say, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3 and more draft capital, and then keeping Justin that way? So yes, his salary may go up, but instead of getting more cap savings to improve your roster, you're now improving your roster by more draft equity, and you get Marvin Harrison Jr., you get a couple more picks by simply trading down.
Yeah, and I think it's a valid argument. I completely understand, but you can't compare the value both in price and impact on the team of a quarterback to any other position on the field. It's just not the same. They take up the most cap space. They have the most impact on wins and losses. And I just think and listen, I'm not sitting here saying it's a foregone conclusion. If I was in that seat with Poles and they gave me and they said, hey, you have to make this decision, I'm not sure I would 100% just unequivocally say, okay, this is the only move. I understand the other side of the argument that you just presented. I just think to pass up on a number 1 overall quarterback 2 years in a row, albeit, last year, would it have been Stroud or Bryce? I don't know if anyone can honestly answer that question. It's a lot easier to answer now, with the seasons and the way everything went on. But that's besides the point. It's hard for me to say, okay, I got 4 years going forward Where now if I have to give Montez Sweat an extension, I want to continue to improve my defense like we did last year, getting Tremaine Edmonds and getting TJ Edwards. I can pay those contracts. I can maybe get a free agent wide receiver to go along with DJ Moore because I'm paying my quarterback peanuts, right? So the question becomes, when you look around the NFL, there's two models of success over long periods of time. There's capturing an elite roster around a rookie, young, cheap quarterback, and you ride that and you maximize not paying $50 million a year to your quarterback, and you're the San Francisco 49ers, right? And then the other side of that coin is you have Patrick Mahomes, or you have this guy that he can take up as much of a percentage of the cap as possible. He can make up for roster deficiencies. He can make up for this young wide receiver score he's had to kind of drag along the whole season and somehow end up in the championship game again. Like, certain guys can overcome it. There's very few in the middle of the pack, right? There's very few guys who fall into that middle tier over a long period of time. And I think that's the challenge these front offices are saying with how expensive quarterbacks get. And all of a sudden you find yourself paying $40 million, even if it's not Mahomes, you pay $40 million to your quarterback. He better be able to make up for holes, because you're not going to be able to put that whole roster together like you could if your quarterback was on a rookie deal. There's not enough money.
Greg, I think we all agree that there was significant progress made by Justin this year. And I think, we saw that highlighted in the Atlanta game. And then towards the end of the year, I even thought the Green Bay game, the final game of the season, it really wasn't Justin Fields being bad was the reason why their offense couldn't do things. Their line was a problem. But if, in fact, Greg, they decide to move forward with Justin, what does that offense have to look like to help him thrive? Is it something where you are cutting the field in half or moving the pocket more frequently? Or do you believe, with better coaching and better players around him, that maybe he can get up to speed and thrive in a system maybe like Shane Waldron would run that will mimic something that you see with the Rams or the 49ers or the Packers or somewhere else?
That, to me, that is the only offense. And this isn't even just about Justin. If you ask me, all right, you're going to run an offense, Olsen, you don't know who your quarterback is. You don't know you don't know anything about your team, but you need to pick right now what system you're going to run. It is not a coincidence that Brock Purdy and Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud and all these young quarterbacks that in a very short amount of time have really grown into real deal dudes, right? They didn't have a real – C.J. Stroud had no transition. He was great as a rookie. Right. Jordan Love, yes, he sat behind Rodgers for years. First time stepping on the field this year. Brock Purdy, this was his first full season. He took over last year in week 14. For them to have the success they did, it is not a coincidence they're all playing in the same system. Tua, down in Miami, same system. To me, that is the system that every young quarterback could benefit from. So if they do stick with Justin, I think it's a good sign that they brought in Shane Waldron. Obviously, he comes from that McVay background. He did a little bit of it. You saw sprinkles of it in Seattle. Sometimes the personnel and whatnot, the philosophy doesn't exactly allow him to do it to the nth degree. If he comes in and he runs that system at its truest form, what we've seen out of San Francisco, what we saw all year, Matt LaFleur probably ran it the most pure of any of the coaches around the league, right? Shanahan's evolved a little bit because Purdy's got some things at a gun that he's good at, and down in Miami, McDaniels has altered it just because of Tua and those wide receivers, and he's put his spin on it. But LaFleur's system, what he ran, I think a guy like Justin, getting him under center, getting him on the move, getting him boots, getting him easy throws, take some pressure off the offensive line, that you're not just sitting back there and shotgun all day saying, hey, rush the passer. I think that system protects the quarterback and the offensive line better than any system in the league. And Detroit this weekend with Ben Johnson, same idea, same philosophy. It's not a coincidence that teams that have success offensively are all, in essence, under the same tree.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and download that ESPN Chicago app. You get our podcasts and live shows there. Now back to the videos.
But, Greg, isn't it also predicated on getting the ball out quick as well and throwing with anticipation and throwing to spots and throwing guys open? And I guess the question I agree with you, and I think it's great insight that some of that stuff, getting him under center, would take pressure off of him. But if you were devising a system for Justin based on how you've seen him play, do you think that they can get to the top of the mountain with that system with him in it?
I think it's hard to guarantee that any of these guys, right? If you would ask me, hey, can Josh Allen get to the top of the mountain? I would have said yes 5 years ago,
right.
And he hasn't. I don't think it's a reflection of him. I don't think you can play quarterback better than Josh Allen did last night and not win and be 1-5 in all these playoff games and all the stats, everyone, right? So it becomes a quarterback-driven narrative, and that's the good and the bad. You win a couple Super Bowls and you don't do anything as a quarterback, you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You carry the team on your back and you play out of your mind like Josh did last night and you lose, you're a loser. It's just the nature of the position. But to answer your question, I think him under center, him play action game, the processing gets picked up as a byproduct of the system, right? You're not sitting up there in shotgun 5 wide, 4 wide, reading half field safeties, reading, all right, if it's single high, you go boundary. If it's cover 2, you go field. Ask Philadelphia how hard that is. Mm-hmm. Go back and remember what that looked like with Jalen Hurts. A heck of a player. Teams would cut their arms off for him to be their quarterback. They got talent all over the place. They sat in shotgun against Tampa the other night and were sitting ducks. Mm-hmm. They couldn't operate, and that was really the nature of the back half of the season. It is very hard to play the way Patrick Mahomes, out of the gun, and Jalen Hurts and those guys. It's just very hard. You got to have everything right. So get him under center, move him, half boot, deep shots. He's got a great arm. If it's not there, he can run. He can be I think that style of play is what suits a guy like Justin, and I think it would. If they do decide to keep him, I think that's the way. You have to maximize every ounce of him. And to me, that gives you your best shot, especially as the offensive line continues to, hopefully they can improve.